shut up and sit down.
You dance like a white man. It's a bad thing. Welcome and good evening. I'm John Caldera, president of the Independence Institute. Thanks for joining us for a very special Freedom on Tap, our Ballots and Bourbon edition. We're going to go over the ballot initiatives on our ballot this year. So feel free, make it a voting party. Grab the ballot, grab some bourbon. You can drink something else. It's got to be booze. And we'll talk over these issues. Hey, as we're going through this, if you want to be part of the conversation, by all means, if you want to call in, we'll hear your voice, then just raise your hand. That's that little button on the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you want to just ask a question, go to the Q&A part of the Zoom meeting, and we'll get to that as well. If you're joining us through Caucus Room, Facebook, or YouTube, you won't be able to talk to us, but you can always watch. So, and feel free to go back to the Zoom meeting if you want to join us. But first, let's introduce our panel of stars. The lovely and talented Arapahoe County DA, George Brauchler, is here with us. Thanks for being here.
It is great to be here on, is Colorado inside?
Yeah, it's close enough. You wouldn't even know.
It's this bourbon thing. I don't.
Am
I allowed
great.
to drink on camera?
Yes, please. It's your political future.
That is how
The lovely and talented Krista Kafer, columnist with the Denver Post, who would agree to drink with me, but only if she could stay home, and she won't tell me where that is.
Yes, I have to drink by myself and just look at you at the screen, but I tell you, with every sip, you're looking better and better.
Better and better and better. And, of course, the lovely and talented columnist for Colorado politics in both the Gazettes, Eric Sondermann, who is obviously in a hotel room someplace. Thank you for joining us, Eric.
Glad to be here, John. Not a hotel room. Our mountain place near Tabernash.
Really? You have a mountain place?
We do.
You there all the time?
Spending most of our time here.
Can I borrow it when you're not there?
We'll talk.
That's a nice way to say no. All right, I tell you what. Let's do a couple of these ballot issues first, and then I want to do a round of talking about Cory Gardner and President Trump versus Biden and weigh in on that. But let's jump right into the water. Let's start with the weirdest one for most people, which is Amendment B. Amendment B is a repeal of the a repeal of Gallagher. I am a no, but there are a lot of Republicans who seem to like it. Let's start off with George and see where we're going.
I'm a big no on the repeal of Gallagher. I think it's another safety measure for us as more and more progressives try to get access to raising taxes. I'll say this. I think Gallagher's flawed. I think it can be improved, especially when it comes to addressing some of the regional disparities that exist. But this Amendment B feels a lot to me like you've gone in to see the orthopedic surgeon and he said, John, your knee is banged up. We're going to take the whole leg. And you're like, oh, okay. Can't we just fix the knee? And nope, I'm sorry. It's take the whole leg or nothing. And I think B is too extreme in that way. We should say no and come back and try to fix it.
My big worry with B is that it opens up tax increases for the legislature. Mm-hmm. They will be able to change assessment rates through the legislative process. And there's already case law that does that. And check out the Independence Institute website. Linda Gorman did some great research. Now, Krista Kafer, you love taxes. Yeah. You're probably a yes.
You know what? I have to go with no.
By the way, your tail is incredible.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I got the cat here. If only Jeffrey Toobin had gotten the memo that he should only pet his cat. But,
we're going Toobin style right here today, by the way.
I don't want my taxes going up. I don't want my property taxes going up. This house is my only asset. I really can't afford to pay more.
That's a straight line if I ever heard one.
Yeah.
Mr. Sondermann, mix it up for us.
I'm not going to duck on many of these or any of these tonight, John, but I'm going to duck on this one because candidly, I haven't figured it out myself. I'm not sure where I'm voting. I share your guys' concern that if it was just a matter of changing the equities between commercial properties and residential properties, that makes some sense. But if it's going to dig deeper into property taxes, I'm less inclined to it. Up until a couple of years ago, I owned a small office building that within like $50,000 was worth the same as our house was worth. And yet we paid 4.5 times the property tax on that office building as we paid on our house. And trust me, we weren't paying a small sum on the house. So there is an inequity between commercial and residential as a function of Gallagher. But that said, I share your concerns and quite frankly, haven't figured it out. This is the ultimate strange bedfellows initiative where you have a lot of Independence Institute types opposed to it, along with Dickie Lee Hullinghorst. And then obviously you have a weird coalition of people in favor of it.
You know, what concerns me the most is that there's no alternative. And I despise when the legislature, nobody will see you, despise when the legislature does this wonderful thing where they say without raising taxes. Well, it doesn't raise taxes for the state government, but it will raise taxes for a lot of local and school districts and special districts. And that means they will backfill less from the state. That doesn't bother me as much as the fact that they can go in and change the assessment rates. And I've heard people say, no, they won't. I promise you they can't. It's against Tabor. Well, yeah, so is calling a fee, tax or fee. All right, let's keep rolling. Let me go to Sonnenberg, I like that. Sondermann on this one, which is charitable gaming. This is one that I don't quite get. So at Independence Institute, we raffle off guns occasionally for our FASTER program. And it was maddening to get our raffling license. So out of pure protectionism, I don't want to make it easier for anybody else. We got in. Screw everybody else. I'm assuming this is a yes on
to be honest with you, of all 11 issues, this is the one. Don't know, don't care. Small potatoes. I guess. Yeah, let's go bingo.
Let's go bingo. Krista Kafer.
Yeah, it's
you look like a charitable lady.
I figured, yeah, very charitable. I just figured that if an organization wants to do something like this, they should have the right to do so without the state's interference. So I went ahead and voted yes.
Well, vote early, vote often. Mr. Law and Order?
You sounded just like the Arapahoe County Clerk and Recorder when you said that, which was actually on a mailer that went out last year. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, very Chicago. I'm a yes on it. Similar reasoning to Krista. I just want to provide less regulatory nonsense, more freedom for folks to engage in this kind of behavior.
So, all right, let's move on to 76. 76 was fascinating. It changes the state constitution, which now says citizens may vote, and changes it to only citizens may vote. I think this was a pretty obvious get out the Trump supporters. I think this is going to pass easily. Let's start off with Krista on this one. As an illegal yourself, Krista, how are you going to vote on this?
Well, as an illegal voter, I went ahead and voted yes. It like you said, it's kind of a red meat thing. Let's get the vote out. It's a little silly, but then I also think that, in California and some local races, they're letting illegal immigrants vote. So, maybe it's a good precaution.
Actually, I think it is a good precaution. There are more, particularly in school board races, are saying, well, if your kid's going to go to our school, you should get a say. What about you?
I'm a yes on this. I think the one thing, and I've got a 17-year-old that lives under my roof, that this thing touches on is, remember, we changed the law a little bit ago to say if you're 17 and a half-ish and you would be 18 at the time of the general, you can vote in the primary. I didn't agree with that, but that became the law. So that effectively wipes that out by saying, hey, we've amended the Constitution to mandate 18 years old and citizenship, but I'm actually okay with that for a lot of the reasons. We have wiped away so many of the privileges and benefits of being a citizen. You take away voting and spread that around to anybody who can figure out a way to cross the border. What's the point of being a citizen?
Also, this is nice because your daughter's going to cancel your vote, so I'm pretty happy about that too.
Buddy, I know.
Mr. Sondermann.
Okay, we're 10 minutes into this. It's about time for me to dissent. I find this one to be mischievous. Unnecessary. I find it to be a solution in search of a problem. I don't know that there's any indication or evidence of significant numbers, or quite frankly, any numbers of non-citizens voting in Colorado elections. I think is funded and fueled by Florida money that is anti-immigrant money. I think you hit the nail on the head, John, that this is designed to gin up a bit of the Trump vote. I'm a no here.
Do you see it doing any harm, though? I see it doing no harm. And yes, it's a solution looking for a problem, but the problem could come, and this seems like a good prophylactic, which is also a nice way for me to use the word prophylactic.
Well, good for you, John. Anyone who had that on their bingo, Independence Institute bingo tonight.
I think it's a drinking word. Prophylactic.
Just filled in a spot.
So, but do you see it doing any harm?
Oh, it probably doesn't do a lot of harm other than what George just mentioned. I don't know if that's massive harm, but yeah, we do have this law that says people who are going to be 18 by the time the November general rolls around are able to vote in primary elections. I don't think that that is some kind of travesty, and this would take that option away.
Well, there's a lot of talk about lowering the voting age to 16. I want to raise it to 65. So actually, let's take a quick detour and talk a little, since this really, I think, had to do with getting out the vote for Trump in what they thought might be a swing state. I don't see Trump having a chance in Colorado. I know there's an undervote for him when it comes to polling. I see no way that Trump wins Colorado.
Yeah,
George?
I don't disagree. I think he loses, and he is always going to have been losing. And I know people hate to hear that said out loud. The goal has always been for him to lose by less. He can lose by 5 points or less. Corey has a fighting chance. He loses by 7 to 9 or double digits. Corey has no chance at all. And I know there are people out there that think there's going to be, like you said, this groundswell of support that just refuses to answer the polling questions on the phone. Yeah, that may be true. It isn't going to be enough to make
it might be
up what
3,
we have.
it might be 3%, might be 4%.
Right.
I don't see it.
I don't either.
Going into the double digits. Krista?
No, I think it's possible he'll do better in this state this time around than last time around. And I say that because
really
there are a number of us who didn't vote for him last time that are voting for him this time for policy reasons. I still don't like the guy. But if that increases a little bit, we could see a narrower margin. And like you said, that bodes well for Cory Gardner, who I would love to see win.
So Republican presidential candidates in Colorado have continued to lose over the last several elections, but by a tighter and tighter margin, which means by Trump's third election, he will win it. Eric, do we agree Trump doesn't have a shot here?
For every person like my friend Krista, who did not vote for him last time, but will vote for him this time, I think there are multiple people who went the other way, who did vote for him last time as the anti-establishment disruptor candidate against Hillary Clinton, who wasn't terribly likable as a candidate. And this time in a COVID environment, there's no way in the world they're voting for him. If he lost Colorado last time by, 4.5 or some number like that, I think you can double it here and it might go into double digits. And I think the spread between Donald Trump and Cory Gardner is probably a 2-point spread. So if Trump loses by 10, Cory loses by 8. If Trump loses by 12, Cory loses by 10. And I suspect those are the numbers we're talking about.
Let's go to the national side. Eric, since you've been following this, I look at the swing states of Florida, which I think Trump is going to win, Texas, which he'll win, Ohio, which I think he'll win, North Carolina, which I think he'll win, but I'm not certain about Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona. These are big states. I know almost every single poll out there says it's impossible for him to win, but it was impossible 4 years ago. Do you see any path? Go to Eric on this.
There's a path, John, but the path is that all the polls are wrong and that you have the same phenomenon that there was 4 years ago, which is undecided is code for voting for Trump, and that there are even some people, a significant number of people, lying to pollsters. The most telling thing to me right here is, where is this battle being fought? Where is Donald Trump spending time? He's holding rallies in Florida. He's holding rallies in Georgia, in North Carolina, in Arizona. Those are all states he won and won reasonably comfortably 4 years ago. to the extent, or even in Iowa and Ohio, he won Ohio by 8 points. He is feeling compelled to campaign for Ohio. He could win all of those states, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, Ohio, Iowa, and still lose the election. And my surmise is he's not going to win all of those states. I think the senior vote bites him in Florida. I think he could lose a number of those states. I think it is more likely to be a Biden landslide than it is to be a narrow Trump victory.
Let me throw this one out there, though. I believe reason Trump won 4 years ago can boil down basically to political correctness. That I think so many conservatives feel stifled, that they can't say what they want to say at work. They can't say it at school. There's a thought police out there. I don't see that situation getting any better. So I wonder, matter of fact, I think it's even worse now under the Black Lives Matter cancel culture. I think there are more people out there who feel stifled by all this, muffled by all this. So I'm not convinced it's not possible. I'm convinced that there's still a minority chance. I'd give it 60-40 Biden wins, but I think there's a shot. Mr. DA?
I think he has a path. I think it's narrower and more uphill than it was a couple months ago, and certainly far more than it was in the COVID. I think, but for COVID, he's running away with this thing. I really believe that. But when you talk about enthusiasm gap, there's a big one. But it's not between the pro-Trump and the pro-Biden people. It's the pro-Trump and the anti-Trump people. And that anti-Trump group has grown bigger and more vociferous. When you look at little telltale signs,
by the way, I think prophylactic is a better word than vociferous.
Prophylactic. I want to throw in Jeffrey Toobin again because I didn't want Chris to be the only one to say that tonight. But when you look at that, plus like the fundraising deficit that exists between Republicans, if you look at the turnout, the early turnout, all signs point towards, in my opinion right now, a Trump loss. I want to caution everyone, though. That's exactly what I said 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can't count this guy out for all the reasons that you said, as we rely upon all these traditional metrics to decide if someone's going to win or not. And then this guy shows up and blows them all up. So could he win? Yes. Do I think he's
Krista and
win?
I had, I think, a similar reaction. 4 years ago, I held my nose and voted for Trump. I look at what has happened policy-wise, not personality-wise, and I'm proud to vote for Trump this time around. It's very different. Krista, does he have a shot?
I think he does have a shot. And you think about this, COVID, you do have people out there who are very fearful, who think of COVID as being sort of the second round of bubonic plague, and they want more shutdowns and more masks and more of that. And then you have a lot of us who are saying, yes, this is a deadly disease. It should be taken seriously, but let's keep the economy open. Let's keep businesses open. I know some small business owners who are on the left who will be voting for Trump because they're tired of seeing their business in peril. They're tired of sending their employees home because of some sort of limitation or shutdown. And I think that's going to come back to bite the Democrats. I hope it does. And then there was the whole rioting thing. You didn't see Republican or conservative fellow travelers out there torching targets and hitting the Capitol with spray paint. That was all the far left. And I hope people remember that even though Biden seems like a sort of gentle older man, he is still part of a group of people who is somewhat okay with looting and vandalism in the name of justice. And I hope people remember that.
What scares me so much about the Democrats now is they are beholden to a crazy wing of their party. And I know Trump is crazy, but Democrats are not the same Democrats that they were. Even in this state, we had Roy Romer and Dick Lamb who pushed through education reform and all sorts of incredible things. And that party is completely gone. And when and if they win the White House, the Senate, and the House, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. And here in Colorado, if the polls are to be believed, our state House and state Senate might not get any better. It could be terrible here as well.
Yeah, that's true. I think we have seen what single party control of government looks like over here in the state of Colorado. I don't want to see it amplified times a billion and on steroids out at the federal government level, especially with the increasing power of the feds, everything they want to do with our money, the willingness to sign off on a stimulus check that further puts us in debt, trillions of dollars. Where's the break on that? I mean, my God, if Trump is destined to lose, we've got to hang on to that Senate, or at least keep it close, 50-50, 49-51, put pressure on them to not go off the rails. If it becomes a 55-45 split in the Senate and we lose the White House, I got to tell you, man, we're going to have this conversation in 2 years and say, what happened to America? Just like we talk about what happened to Colorado.
Well, let's talk about Colorado. Why don't we get back to some of the ballot initiatives? And by the way, if you want to join us on this, feel free to raise your hand if you want to talk to us so we can hear your voice. If you want to write a question in the Q&A, do that as well. And by the way, that's on Zoom. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or Caucus Room, back over to Zoom if you want to join in. All right, Amendment 77 gives local control to the gambling towns. I want to go to Eric first on this one. I'm just curious where you are on this. Let's be honest. If 77 passes, what that is all about is having raising the limits for gambling in our 3 gambling towns.
I think you're right, John. If we want to raise those limits and raise, change and expand the number of games that can be offered, let's have that debate at a statewide level, just like we had a statewide debate to authorize gaming in the first place. This strikes me as a way to avoid that statewide debate by letting the 3 dozen voters in Black Hawk and the 4 dozen voters in Cripple Creek, or whatever the number is, do this on their own. Obviously, those people are very self-interested, many employed by the industry. Let's have this statewide debate, but I don't want to turn it over.
Oh, you are such a Puritan. This is because you're fearing losing that wonderful condo of yours up in the mountains.
I'm a no on this one.
Krista, by the way, Krista, I haven't asked you, what are you drinking tonight?
Well, I did have a little bit of bourbon, and now I'm having a little bit of tea. I figured if I had too much bourbon, you might look just too good. What can I say?
Have some more bourbon. Please. Please, I'm a lonely man. Have some bourbon.
I'll pour one on the next break. So gambling, I'm not a gambler. I just don't feel that lucky. But I figure if other people want to gamble or they want to have gambling institutions, that's up to them. I like local control. I voted yes.
I'm looking at the DA here. He's Mr. Law and Order. I'm guessing he was a no vote on this one.
Oh, no, man. I'm all about local control. I don't understand why it's good enough for fracking, but not good enough for gambling. I'll bet it's going to pass.
Oh, God. I hope you're out of office soon. Anything that helps me lose my kids' college fund, I'm in favor of, so I'm a yes on this. All right, let's switch over to what I think is the most hateful thing on this ballot, and that's Prop EE. And if you don't know, amendments change the Constitution, propositions change state statute. If it has a letter on it, it was referred by the legislature. If it has a number on it, it was initiated by citizens like me to get something on the ballot. So EE was a Jared Polis-backed tax on tobacco. And I'm tired of the hatefulness that we have against smokers, that this raises the price so high and also has a price floor, which means discount cigarettes will now be more expensive than premium ones. So if you're out shopping for a Kia and it's the same price as a Porsche, you might as well buy the Porsche. But what I hate about it is the intolerance. We have a gay governor who has seen what intolerance of unpopular lifestyles are like, and he's the one pushing this intolerance of an unpopular lifestyle. I find it disgusting. And I also say that we've got an abortion initiative on the ballot, and my suspicion is that will fail at the ballot box, but this will pass. So when it comes to your body on abortion, you get a say, but when it comes to your body on having a cigarette, you don't. George.
Yeah, I'm opposed to this. The intolerance piece is part of it, no doubt, but it's so insidious in that this is like a Marlboro-backed thing that is designed to do what you just said, which is to take all those competitive lower-priced cigarettes and increase them so that you end up competing with the big boys at that price level where someone's going to opt for the Porsche instead of the Kia. I don't think government ought to be in the business of setting a price floor for these kinds of products. I also think that if they were truly interested in affecting behavior in a positive way, more of this money would be funneled towards some sort of cessation or educational. It's not. It's used for other things unrelated to tobacco. They're just piling on to tobacco users, and I don't like it.
Dan asked the question, where's the Prop 77 money going? It's supposed to pay for pre-K education, but it doesn't pay for pre-K education for at least a couple of years, and there's nothing that means it's actually going to go there. And I also find it so weird. So if you support funding preschool, you should go to a preschool and light up to show how much you care about the kids.
Get your kids on the tobacco. Yeah.
Krista, I know you're a big smoker.
Actually, I'm an ex-smoker, and I can't stand cigarette smoke, but here's the deal. I voted against this. And in fact, I even wrote about it in my Denver Post column. It's a way to plunder the poor.
Denver Post? What's that like?
Yeah.
Must be nice.
You know, once we got rid of the riffraff, it really has become a great paper.
Eric,
but it's a way for the legislature to plunder the poor, basically to pay for more programs. And it's also a way for certain tobacco companies to edge out their competition. In this case, it is Marlboro edging out the discount tobacco places so that they can get more money. And I don't like companies using government to do their bidding. I think that's wrong. It's unfair.
What I love about the left is that they say they want to help the poor. And there are 4 tax initiatives: the tax cut, there's payroll tax, there's a Gallagher thing, which raises tax, and this. All of them, except for the tax cut, which I'm involved with, raises taxes more on poor people. The effective rate on someone on the lowest end of the scale versus the highest, over $200,000 of income for tobacco, they smoke about the same. It's a myth that poor people smoke more, but their effective rate of taxation is 51 times, not 51%, 51 times more than what the rich guy does. So it's just an attack on the poor. And so when they talk about tax fairness and the poor, you can tell them to shove it because it's a complete lie. But Eric Sonderman's going to tell me why I'm wrong.
No, I'm not going to tell you why you're wrong, John. We're unanimous on this one. I'm going to offend my friends in the tobacco control community. I was the consultant back in 2004 who did that tobacco tax initiative. I'm going to offend my friends in the preschool, early childhood education community. I did the Denver preschool program when that first passed. Fortunately, neither of those groups are watching this show tonight. I'm not sure they're on your list, John. But this one just strikes me, even though I've been involved in these causes in the past, this is too much. It is too big of an increase. We keep going to sin taxes too often. And I just philosophically object to the price fixing that's involved in this, of setting an arbitrary price floor.
But it's for the kids. Didn't you read the Denver Post? It's to help the kids not smoke.
And in terms of Jared Polis, I don't think Jared Polis cares one way or another about tobacco taxes. He's just trying to fund his preschool programs, and sin taxes are an easy way that voters are going to buy into to get that done.
But it's so intolerant. It is, for anybody who cares about gay rights to then turn around and beat on this political minority, it blows my mind. It is just pure hatred of people who have a different lifestyle. And it's not like they cost more, because they die sooner and they save a whole bunch of money.
Some truth to that.
True. A lot of truth to that. All right. I tell you what, why don't we get rolling on the national popular vote? Let's start with Eric on this one. I found this one to be amazing, that if Colorado rejects the national popular vote, it could put an ice pick in the national movement. It is running a dead heat right now.
Amazing.
So
Amazing.
I'm curious, Eric, where are you on this one?
I wrote a column about it back in, I think, June in Colorado Politics. Way back in 2000, I think it was 2004, early 2000s, Katie Atkinson, who many of us remember and has departed us way too early. Katie and I led a campaign against a measure, was not similar to this proposition. I mean, not the same, but it would have proportioned Colorado's electoral college votes proportionally. It was this crazy idea. I love the title. Of all my years of politics, I think it was the best committee title we ever came up with. We called it Coloradans Against a Really Stupid Idea. This one is only
that was classic Katie Atkinson. God bless her.
This one is only slightly less stupid. It strikes me as a workaround, a subterfuge, You really should have put, somebody left of center on this panel, John, because I can't be that person for you, as you well know.
That was your job here tonight.
Now,
you had one job.
You miscast me one more time. If we want to amend the Constitution to get rid of the Electoral College, and that is a argument to be had, two thoughts. Number one, a much more egregious example of anti-quote small d democracy than the Electoral College is the U.S. Senate. So why aren't we pointing all the guns at the U.S. Senate? Secondly, let's pass a constitutional amendment. That process is provided for, but that requires hard work and it requires persuasion. So instead you do this interstate compact, which is a workaround. I'm opposed to it. I've commented on that. I've written about it. I still think it is a bad idea.
Ms. Kafer, I know how you feel about this one, but why?
Well, I think Eric and I should start a committee against something that's slightly less stupid than the last stupid thing, because this is a terrible idea. If I were to vote for, let's say I voted for Biden, it didn't, but let's say I voted for Biden and the state went for Trump and the national popular vote went for Trump, suddenly my Biden vote basically becomes a Trump vote. And that's not fair. That's not fair to any Coloradan. We don't need to sort of outsource our voting to California. I want my votes to be my votes here in the state of Colorado. I want Colorado to be represented. I don't want to be flyover country. We got to get rid of this thing. We got to vote no.
I love how much money is coming from California. I know the state is turning into California anyway, so why not just let them buy it? This is a big move, and something like 3% of the money they've raised has come from Coloradans. Everything else is from Californians. Give me a quick, you're against it.
Two big facts that bother me about this, and you can see a moment where maybe the parties have been so diminished that there could be real legitimate third-party candidates. The way this thing is set up, you could conceivably win Colorado's electoral votes and never have appeared on the ballot in Colorado. That's one. The bigger one is this. Demographers will tell you, and we'll see what the census says, that by 2040, 50% of America's population will be in 8 states. Spoiler alert, Colorado ain't one of them. So we are rapidly moving to a place where a handful of states, largely on the coasts, are going to dictate our political future everywhere if we get rid of the Electoral College.
Move on to 115. The personhood amendment a few years back, and it came up over and over again, was a political nightmare. Anybody who signed on to it had to run away from it because it was so big, so huge. This late-term abortion issue is something much more narrow, something very specific. I know, Krista, you're a big fan of this. You were carrying a petition for it. Why should folks vote for it?
People have got to vote for this. 80% of Americans oppose late-term abortion. Late-term abortion is not popular. Yeah, there are still quite a few folks that think that abortion should be available in the first trimester, but most people think that late-term abortion, when a child can be born prematurely and survive, is a really bad idea. It's too extreme. And this does have an exception for the life of the mother. It really is about keeping several hundred babies alive that would otherwise die a terrible, terrible, painful death. This is about protecting moms and protecting babies. And so it may pass narrowly. I mean, I have yet to see a I heart late-term abortion sign in someone's yard, but I do know that the multi-billion-dollar abortion industry is running some very deceitful ads. It may end up causing people to decide that late-term abortion is okay. It's not okay. It hurts people, it hurts women, and it kills babies. I hope that everyone will vote for this initiative.
Bring it over to Sonderman on this one. This is one of the issues that it's a tough personal issue. And if you don't know where you stand on this issue, I don't know what to tell you. But Eric, where are you?
This is such a tough issue. I have all the respect in the world for Krista's leadership, Krista's advocacy, her passion for this issue. I think probably at its core, you and I, John and I are pro-choice on most matters. I think Krista and George are probably pro-life. That is fine. That's a divide in this country, and there are people of goodwill on both sides of that divide. Late-term abortion is different than the, sort of the core crux pro-choice, pro-life issue. I did a debate, moderated a debate that Krista was part of, along with a good spokesman on the other side. I don't know where I come down, and I don't think there are any votes to be changed here for all the admiration I have for Krista. I know Rabbi Joe Black, who had an ad about his and his wife's diagnosis of a very late-term Tay-Sachs disease in their to-be-born infant, and their decision to abort that infant. I'm going to leave it there.
Well, let me push that over to Krista, who's very passionate about this. It does have exceptions. Women who get an abortion, a late-term abortion, under this are protected. They're not criminals. The doctor is the one who faces, I believe, a misdemeanor and losing their doctor's license. I've heard people say that their hesitation is that there's no exception for rape or incest. There's no exception for any sort of fetal abnormality where a child could be born just to suffer for weeks or months before they die, kind of similar to what Eric was talking about. Do those arguments persuade you, Krista?
Well, 5.5 months, 5.5 months of pregnancy, people can do whatever they want to do. So if, whether it's other personal issues, 5.5 months to get an abortion. By the time 5.5 months has passed, you have a child who has fingers and toes, who can survive outside the womb, who recognizes her mother's voice, who even recognizes music that's played outside of her body. These children are babies, they're infants, they're just smaller. And so I tend to believe that every child deserves her first breath, whether she's a healthy baby or whether she's a baby with a disability. And most of these late-term abortions are done on healthy infants. They're not done necessarily on disabled children, but I have friends with disabilities, including disabilities that will ultimately claim their life. So I think about these children, why cut a short life shorter? Why end the life of a child who doesn't have a long life to live? I want to see these babies living for the time that they have on this planet, to be able to breathe the air, to be able to hear their mother's voice. And this amendment, or this proposition rather, would make that happen, would protect these precious lives.
George.
I'm sensitive about this topic because I recognize that I'm a dude and that these are the kinds of things that I'll never have to confront on a personal level the way women would. But I have a wife and I do have a 17-year-old daughter, and these issues matter to me. I think what I found most compelling about this, aside from the pro-life aspect of it and what Krista said, and Krista will know this number better than I will, we are at the extreme edge of abortion in the state of Colorado. We are one of a handful of states that put absolutely no limits on the when, where, how, and whatever regarding abortion. That seems a little crazy for me that we're out there. We've always been out in front in terms of being one of the first states to legalize it. I get all that, but for the reasons that Krista stated, it seems to me that we're perhaps doing more good than there would be potential harm in this particular case. I'm coming from a family where we have adoptions, where we have kids that are disabled. And the idea that we are going to say as a state that we're not able to exercise our right to choose because we can't terminate a pregnancy at the 39th week, I think that's crack smoke crazy.
Although you use the term disabled, there's also other things than disabled. I lost a child who had no chance for a long, healthy life, or even a short, healthy life. And part of me as a father goes, if I knew that, would I have been merciful? I don't know. And and that's tough. That's tough. If a child is injured in the womb and is, these are tough questions. I just want to make it clear. And I think people on both sides of this issue make it so black and white that it's not just black and white, that there are these rarities that we ought to talk about. I think the key, though, is that the demand for abortion continues to drop. That's what's exciting, to the point now that something like this could pass. And it's getting those numbers down, getting it down to zero. I tell you what, we've got a caller who wants to join us, Krista Laura. So Krista Laura, tell me, what are you drinking? Well, we're going to bring over your microphone here in just a second.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, hi. I'm drinking Big Wave Golden Ale.
Oh. Well, that's not bourbon at all.
It is liquid.
It is like, oh, wait, what's it called when you have a shot of whiskey and you chase it down with a beer? Is that a Boilermaker?
Yeah, I think that's right. You drop it into your beer. Yeah, that's it.
That's what she's doing. All right, what do you have for us, Krista?
Yeah, hi. I know many of the guests are voting no on Amendment B. From what I heard, it's because it would give the legislator power to change property tax rates. But it also repeals Gallagher. And that's epic. I think people, especially commercial property owners like me, should get on board and repeal it. Then when legislators attempt any increase, we can go from there. Your input, please.
I feel your pain. And Eric's story about one of his office, but yeah, as you know, he's a slumlord, so he's got a lot of rental properties all over. But that the unfairness to commercials, I agree with you. It's what the left loves to do, is to hide taxes, and Gallagher hides taxes. So you talk to your friends out in New York and they go, your property taxes are so low. No, we pay for it every time we buy a loaf of bread at King Soopers because that's there. What I worry about is that B has no protection. If passed, it is a tax increase, and there's nothing to protect us from that. I want to come back on this because I agree with you. Gallagher is wrong, and I want it gone, but I want some sort of alternative. Quick thought, George?
Yeah, listen, I don't disagree with what she's saying, and my wife's a business owner and confronts this as well. But I'd say this: there's nothing else in our lives that we just say, let's get rid of it all in its entirety. A car has a flat tire, we don't get rid of the car, we repair it. The front door stops working on the house or it's squeaky, we repair it. This is the only thing I can think of where the legislature has said there are some things that need to be repaired with B. Let's just destroy the entire thing. There's more good to it than bad, and it can be fixed in a way that I think addresses this particular issue, but also gives us that added protection that the legislature can't come in and keep jacking up the taxes on us.
Let's keep rolling with what is by far the most crucial thing that has ever been on a ballot ever, which is Proposition 116, which will change your life when it passes. You will be better looking, you will be thinner, you will be healthier, your kids will stop messing around. It will change everything, and it will also lower our income tax just a wee bit. Let's start off with Krista on this one.
I'm with you. This is a great amendment. I already feel better looking. I already feel smarter just even thinking about it. And I think it's terrific because there is a kind of sleight of hand of like, oh, we're not going to pass any tax. We can't pass a tax increase because we have to ask the voters. So we're just going to slip it in over here as a fee, and then effectively raise taxes without actually calling them a tax. So what I love about this is that as a taxpayer, I will have a chance to vote on things that are in effect.
You're getting ahead of yourself. That's 117. This one's a tax cut, which is the income tax cut.
Darn it. What have I done? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you've been drinking. You've been drinking.
I have had too much bourbon.
Yeah.
So, okay, I will amend my answer. Let me have a sip of this. So I will amend my answer that, yes, I think 117 is amazing. 116 also amazing. I feel you're better looking and smarter now, just thinking about it, because it is, it's a tax break. And here's the irony. The other side decided that they would run a tax increase. So this was a kind of like, if you're going to run a tax increase, we're going to run some tax relief. Well, they didn't get enough signatures to get theirs on the ballot, but this one did. So I thought, what the hey? And I voted for it.
The other part of this, and for those who don't know, I put this on the ballot, so I'm pretty partial to it. When the Trump tax code came, it lowered our federal taxes, but it raised our state income taxes to the tune of about $500 million a year over the next decade. So $500 million a year that we're paying more in state income tax to get a little bit of that back. And when I keep hearing the sky is falling or this is a tax cut for the rich, that's a tax cut for everyone. I am tired of our taxes being raised without our permission, and this just brings a little bit of back. And rich guys like you obviously like it too.
Yeah, I'm about to be unemployed in January. Let's be clear. This is a rented jacket. I'm all about the tax code. I agree that Krista's history here matters to me. The only downside of this is we don't have this card to play again when they revisit the idea of blowing up our flat tax. And that's coming.
Why don't we have this idea again?
I think it is less likely to continue to drive it down on a future ballot. By the way, I don't want to discourage you from doing it. I just think it is less likely to happen. But I love this thing, man. I love the idea of decreasing taxes, and to watch all of the progressives, tax and spend folk pull their hair out and throw themselves out of buildings like, we're not going to be able to fund the roads if you do. It's just fun.
I love how the left constantly goes to what's whatever polls best. The Washington Monument gamut. We won't be able to fund education. They don't talk about maybe ending the tax credit for rich guys to buy Teslas, or giving money to Quentin Tarantino and movie credits, or all these other things. Oh, that's too small. You guys will never do that. Eric, I have no idea where you are on this one, but given that you're living off of your investments now, I don't think the income tax matters to you.
It still matters. Thank you very much, John. Krista sort of stole my thunder, even though I'll come to a different conclusion here. But there's this rich irony that the only reason this is on the ballot, thanks to you and a few others, John, is because you put this up as a countermeasure to what they were calling the fair tax, the graduated income tax, with really ramped up income tax levels for high earners. That's a debate the state is going to have at some point. At some point, they'll succeed in getting the signatures. But they sort of brought this on themselves. They invited the response, and you provided the response. And then they didn't deliver the goods and get their own measure on the ballot. That said, you can argue, and I'll come down on your side more often than not, about whether the state needs a ton of additional resources. I'm not sure you can make the case in this COVID era that the state really needs or can do with fewer resources. So I'll be a tepid no on this one.
Hey, you get rich guys with money to burn. I am tired of you people.
In your mountain mansion.
Your mountain McMansion over there.
Look at this bedroom. Does this look like a mansion to you, John?
That's a walk-in closet.
Exactly. That's the size of my entire house right there.
I tell you what, I'm tearing up here.
Fake liberal tears again. All right, now, Krista, tell me why you love 117, which has the worst title on all of these measures. For those who don't know, when we citizens bring something up to put on the ballot, it goes to this bureaucratic committee called a title board. And these three people, as good as they are, they have to follow this formula, and they do this stuff, and it comes up with terrible ballot titles, whereas the Gallagher Amendment starts without raising taxes, which is a lie. Just like Prop CC last year, without raising taxes. That's because the lawmakers get to write their own ballot language. Citizens can't write their own ballot language. This is simply to vote on fees. And since the Supreme Court of Colorado says, as long as you call a tax a fee, you don't need to ask for it, which is why we have the hospital provider fee and the faster fee and the reinsurance fee and the growth dividend and the mill levy freeze. But by the way, that's still not enough taxes for Sondermann because we're still not taxed enough. But we never got to vote on any of those. All this says is if it's going to be over 100 million, we get a vote. Krista, now you can tell us, you drunk girl, why this is a good idea.
I'll keep my answer short just because the other guys got to have more of a chance to talk since I already answered. This is a great initiative, and I hope everybody votes for it. It is going to allow us to vote on fees, which have been disguised as basically tax increases in disguise. So yeah, vote yes on 117 and 116 while you're at it. But
by the way, when you die, your cat will actually eat you, whereas if you have a dog, they'll lay down and die right next to you. But being a cat lady, that's fine.
Waste not, want not. I've got a dog and a cat. I hope if my body's laying in the yard, they both have a snack.
Krista, is there any chance at all your cat's name is Tubin? That you
stop it?
Stop it. Oh, you're so gross. This is Toffee, by the way, who says hello to Danny and Juliana, who are tuning in right now.
Oh, Juliana,
and I tell you who would really who will polish me off is the chickens. It's like having velociraptors. If I fell in their pen and died, they would eat me down to the bone.
There's a Johnny Carson joke to Zsa Zsa Gabor going on right now, but I'm not going to take that either. 117, George.
Yeah, look, I'm a big yes on this. Anything that allows us to have more say over what the legislature does to take our money. And look, the people that are opposed to this, the progressives that continue to thunder against Tabor and this, and my concern, by the way, is the language is so complicated that it will be difficult for it to pass, not because the concept isn't good, but because the language is tough. What's going on in the background of all this is there are a group of progressives who truly feel like you and I just ain't smart enough to know when it's time to tax ourselves. And that's the only reason to be opposed to something like this, is you think the public will disagree with you.
What about that tax-hungry rich guy, Sondermann, in his mansion?
The misnomers that are going around here about my mansion, which is quite humble here, John, and that I'm
Notice he doesn't give the full tour with his laptop.
I'd like to see that.
Bring it down to the wine cellar, and then we'll decide.
Yeah, right. Or the misnomer that I'm some kind of representative for the left. You're without hair, John, but any progressive tuning this in, which is approximately 0 people, would tear their hair out at the thought that I speak for anywhere.
Agreed. Doesn't mean I can't mess with you. All right.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you can't mess with me. So have at it. Doug Bruce lives. I mean, Doug Bruce going on 30 years later. This isn't his initiative, but it's certainly in his spirit. I would have loved to see it be part of a bigger conversation, a bigger package, where you trade off the right to vote, which is what people love about Tabor, and which is probably the non-negotiable of Tabor, maybe for some other reforms to Tabor that common sense people on both the left or right could come to in terms of ratchets or whatever. So I think there was a compromise to be had, but we don't live in an age of compromise here.
You didn't tell me how you're voting on it, you weasel.
Yeah, I thought I did that pretty well.
Yeah, you did. Try again. How are you voting?
I haven't figured it out. Probably no.
I would respond to you by saying this. It was the Colorado Supreme Court who changed the definition of what a fee is. That's right. When we passed Tabor back in 1990, I remember being part of those fights, and the time it failed before, it was because they said, fees are included, which means every time the library wants to raise its late fee for a book from a nickel to a dime, we're going to go for a vote. This is crazy. That's what killed it. And so Doug Bruce put fees on the side, not knowing that several years later, the Supreme Court would blow it open so that everything the legislature does, they can just call it a fee and pass it. Factoid here.
John, I really don't disagree with you. I think there has been an over-reliance on fees in the aftermath of Tabor. I do love to correct you, and Tabor passed in 92 and not 92.
It failed in 1990, passed in 92. You're correct.
But I don't agree with your fundamental analysis of this ever-increasing reliance on fees.
Well, let's put it this way. When to wonk out for just a second, when Tabor was passed, about 2/3 of all the money that was spent by the state was spent by the general fund. This is where the legislature decides where it's going. After Tabor, they enterprise everything and put it into a different bucket. And now the state general fund is only about 1/3 of what the state spends. 2/3 are in this bucket that has no direct representation. If you care about democracy, you've got to say taxation with representation is important. And these guys are shoveling off 2/3 of government to appointed boards, not even to elected folks. That's a long-term damage.
That, John, you hit on one, which is the enterprises and the fees. The other is that we've basically taken higher ed off the books in terms of general fund support. So higher ed is now all in that other category as well.
So is Medicaid spending, and 1 out of every 4 Coloradans is on Medicaid. So is everything else. And so to pass a car tax, you call it a fee, but my wallet doesn't know the difference between a car tax and a fee. So if you look at your car registration, you see tax, and then fee you didn't get to vote for. So I think this is an important thing. I don't think it's going to pass because of the language. I think just like people want to vote on taxes, I think they want to vote on fees. Any disagreement? Anybody not get a say on this?
I agree. I just think the language is too complicated, and that was their goal.
I agree with you. If you had a straight up vote on vote for fees, it would pass and it wouldn't be close.
Right. But then again, because the legislature gets to write their own language, but we citizens don't get to write our own language.
That's right.
It's part of the unfairness. And our state constitution makes it very clear. We, the people, are also part of the legislature, which is why we have the initiative and the referendum process. But apparently, even though we are the legislature, some legislatures are more equal than others. So we'll keep rolling on that. Tell you what, why don't we go to Zoom and talk to some folks here? I know Abby wants to chat with us. Abby, it's always good to hear from you. Where are you right now? And what are you drinking?
I am sitting at my boyfriend's house. I'm drinking wine.
Lucky boyfriend.
And I have a question he's in the other room, so he's not listening to me.
By the way, that
I don't think
broke a
he's
lot of
drinking.
hearts.
I'm gonna have to fix that for him.
We have like 500 guys on staff here who have always wanted to go out with you. So now that they found out you got a boyfriend.
I don't think you have 500 guys on staff.
That's a lie.
Or 500 people on staff.
Fair point. All right, what do you have for us?
But I appreciate it. So on this, who writes the language for these things? I was with my dad while he was filling out his ballot, and he's in Denver. So I think this is something that was specific to Denver. But it says raising an increase of something of not more than $1,500 million. It doesn't say 1.5 billion. It says 1,500 million. How on earth do they get away with that kind of language?
Which one are we talking about? One?
I don't know what this is, and they didn't get a full picture of it. It says it ends in a 4B, and I think it's something for the Denver public schools.
Okay, that is a local issue and in the same way, why your ballot is so important. Not only do you have the state issues, you have the governor, not the governor this year, president, senator, congressman, but you also have all these local issues. And so many of them are tax increases, and they do the same thing of without raising taxes when in fact it is a tax increase.
But where do they get away with calling what is actually $1.5 billion, $1,500 million? Like, why not say 1.5 thousand million?
That is a great question.
And who gets to choose those things? And could we put it on a ballot?
The city council chooses that one.
Oh, it makes me so angry. But could we put it on a ballot that if you're going to raise taxes, then you have to put that with all the zeros? Like, I want to see 1,500,000,000,000,000,000,000.
I think on the state they have to, but on local initiatives, they take a lot of leeway. And part of it is because we haven't been able to get enough donors to pay for different groups to be watchdogs on this stuff. There was a time where we would have enough people to sue on those type of things, but the left controls so much. They get away with a lot, particularly on the local side. Keep in mind, Colorado has 5,000 governments, 5,000 of them. And the state government is one government out of 5,000. The rest work with a ton of, without a whole lot of transparency. Hey,
I find this infuriating, especially as a math teacher. Like, fourth graders have enough trouble with this, and I was like, place values on the ballot, and this is insane.
That's terrific.
Would you accept,
like, when are we ever going to use this? Apparently,
would you accept the answer 110s for 1,000? Something
110s. Like all right, we're moving on. Abby, thanks so much. All right, let's go to what I fear could pass this year, which is a family leave bill, which sounds so wonderful and so good, but this is a job killer. And I agree with what the Common Sense Institute put together of how this won't even last a year before it goes bankrupt. Let's start with George, and then we'll head over to Eric.
I'm a hard no, but not because the goals aren't laudable. I mean, in our own DA's office, we've come up with a way to provide for fully funded 12 weeks of family medical leave act stuff, but without raising
the cost. Money.
Well, without raising the cost to taxpayers and doing some other creative things. But the aspect of this family thing that CSI has pointed out, Common Sense Institute, is that it is going to put us in a position where we're going to have to raise taxes and assessments on people in terms of what employers have to contribute to cover the beyond the projected benefits that are out there. And it's just like anything else, just like the pre-K thing. We'll set the bar low enough that people go, oh, that's not so bad. And then it passes, they find out, oh my gosh, utilization is so much more than we ever thought. I guess we're going to have to go and raise taxes.
I didn't know until I dove into it that it starts at 90% of your pay. So in other words, if you decide to go on leave, you can get up to 90% of your pay for not working. And you don't have to take it consecutively. So you could take every Friday off all year long and have a 3-day weekend and get paid 90% of what you get paid each and every one of those Fridays. It's also one of those great screw the poor initiatives, because poor people effectively pay a lot more in payroll tax. People who make money off of investments or renting out their mansions in the mountains like Eric, they don't pay those payroll taxes.
That's
so
right.
Eric, what's your feeling on 118?
I'm not used to saying ditto George Brauchler, but on this one, I'm going to say ditto George Brauchler.
I love that.
No, that is sad for you.
And I would just add, I would add 2 other points. I agree with what George said, but let me add 2 other points. One, without having the detail right in front of me, there's a provision in there that allows the administrator or the governing board of this program to up the tax level without any follow-up legislation, any vote, anything, just basically on the administrator's will. And you know that option will be taken, and will be taken rather soon. Secondly, as John knows, I've been involved for a number of years here in trying to bring some common sense reforms to Colorado's public pension system, to Colorado PARA, which is obviously pushing a heavy ball up a steep hill. And I worry that this becomes, no matter the wonderful good intentions behind it, it becomes another PARA. It becomes another unfunded, underfunded liability that we're dealing with indefinitely into the future.
My fear is that this is going to pass. My sense is this is going to be a blue wave, and it just feels so very good. Krista, what do you add to this?
So I'm self-employed, so I'm basically exempt. What I'm concerned about are those small employers. Say, take a restaurant, for example, that has, say, 30 employees. If an employee takes time off, a waiter, a waitress, somebody who washes the dishes, that restaurant, in order to continue to handle the people coming in the door, will have to replace that person while that other person is gone. So it's 100% replacement while the other person is gone. And if you consider that these small restaurants don't have much profit margin, and that profit margin has already seriously gone down given the COVID scenario and the restrictions the government has put on restaurants, we could see even more restaurants going out of business. I don't see this really hampering or hurting the high-tech, bolder institutions, the big industries. What I see it hurting is small mom and pop places that are already under substantial stress, closing and then sending their employees. And waiters and waitresses at decent restaurants make good money, but suddenly you go from making some money to making no money. That's a terrifying prospect for anybody. And I also think about the dishwashers and other people who don't make very good money but are getting by. They're now out of work and out of money, and may not have other places to go because other restaurants are going to be similarly situated. This is really unfair to small employers and to the low-income people that they employ.
And it also gives a great pass. This whole family leave issue gives a great pass to the governor, who now gets to be Pontius Pilate on this and wash his hands from it and not take a position. This would not go through the legislature, even this progressive of a legislature, because it is an economy killer. Yeah. And it's so sad for those marginal businesses. This is now a 1.2% tax on their payroll. They're paying that, and that's going to be higher unemployment. It's really, really sad. No state has something as lucrative as this for the beneficiary. Most states that have done this, and there's only a handful, start at 70 or 60% of your pay, not 90%. Yeah, and Eric is dead on this. This brings up a whole new para, and I think within a year or two it will be upside down, and rates are going to go up. It's just off. Hey, because of the bourbon, I forgot all about the wolves. Forgot about the wolves. So thanks to a Facebooker who reminded us. This wolf thing for me is diabolical. And it really shows the power of the urban areas over the rural areas. that guy, you know, we talk about local control when it comes to gambling, but, you know, here, guys in Boulder and Denver are going to put in this brand new species, not reintroducing a species, but a brand new species that are going to destroy people's livestock. This is something where people in that area should be voting. George, I think this one passes easily because it feels good.
I think for whatever reason, people like furry animals, and that's why it's going to pass. And they love the pictures and the pretty eyes and stuff. But
they're gonna eat Krista Kafer's cat. That thing is dead.
That's right. And when Krista dies in the backyard, Krista as well.
Yeah, and Krista as well. That's a good point.
They'll be competing with the cat and the dog.
Everybody's got to eat.
Everybody's got to eat.
It's the circle of life, and this is where we cue in Elton John.
And what's odd is the wolf is already here. So in Wyoming, people don't get this. The wolf was reintroduced there. It's a new species of wolf. It is so prolific because it doesn't use a prophylactic. I've been able to use that now 3 times. That it is a shoot on sight animal. You can shoot it on sight because it does so much damage. And now it's moving in here. We don't need to spend more of our money to bring that's already here. Krista, are you willing to sacrifice your cat for a big wolf?
Well, like I said, everybody's got to eat. But the thing is I am sympathetic to this initiative. I like the idea of ecological restoration. We do have, diseased deer. We've got feral horses. We've got prey that another large carnivore could take down and survive off of. That said, we already have wolves coming in from the north. I think they will repopulate in the state of Colorado. We don't need people bringing in even more wolves. And I am also feel compassion for the ranchers. Even though they get compensated under this initiative, nobody wants to see their livestock torn apart. And so we've got people that have llamas, sheep, cattle, buffalo, other animals out there. And just having to contend with another apex predator is going to make their job harder. I say let nature take its course. The wolves can come in naturally. We can handle them when they get here. Actually, they're already here. We don't need to bring in more.
Eric Sonderman's a big fan of Game of Thrones, and he loves those big wolves in it.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's a yes vote on it. Why are you such a strong yes vote on this, Eric?
I'm a hard no, John.
What?
And never even got into Game of Thrones, but that's my loss. This mega mansion that you keep referring to, we happen to be in Northwest Colorado, not as far northwest as I think we're talking about, but we're surrounded by ranchers. I think their voice needs to be heard here. I wrote a column. I referred to this initiative as urban virtue signaling. And I think
that's beautiful. That's perfect.
I think that's what it is. A lot of people in the metro area, the Front Range, who drive an SUV with a bike rack and consider themselves a wonderful Colorado outdoorsman, have this romantic notion of Colorado, are going to vote yes for it, even though they live 250 or 300 miles away from where the impact is going to be.
I think we're unanimous in all that. All right, let's talk about just a couple other issues. Steve has been asking, George especially, how do we vote on judges? And for those who don't know, everyone seems surprised every 4 years that there's electoral college and you have to re-educate them about that. In Colorado, we need to re-educate people about the retention process.
Yeah, that's right. So
judges are appointed by the governor, that's right, and then they're up for retention, not a vote. So it's an up or down. And they always get an upvote, always. And so there's never a campaign and people just say, oh, it's a judge. And you have to be very careful. There's never any criticism about judges because you have to go in front of judges. So campaigns against judges are a very dangerous thing. You have to go up against judges.
I do.
How do you vote on these retentions?
Well, I happen to know the judges in our jurisdiction and how they perform, so I'm able to vote probably at a better educated level than most folks. There is a performance review commission, judicial performance review, that puts out a blue book, in essence, a list of recommendations. But I got to be honest, man, short of you murdering someone in your own courtroom, the chances of getting a do not retain vote are very, very slim. That's not helpful. But I will tell anyone who's out there listening right now and they think, well, I'm just going to vote no because I want to see if we can't get them overturned. The answer for me in an environment where we've had Democrat governors, other than Owens, for the last 50-ish years, the answer isn't, could we do better with a judge? The real question is, could we do worse? And the answer more and more is, yes, we could do worse with a lot of them. And that is because those judicial nominating commissions are a product of what the Supreme Court picks and what the governor picks. Well, if anyone hasn't been following, you should know that 6 out of the 7 Supreme Court justices were appointed by Democrat governors, and that one remaining Owens appointee is going to age out in the next couple months. So you have all Democrats controlling the entire process. Could we do worse than the judges that we have? It depends, but I would say in some circumstances, the answer is yes. And that's a horrible standard to apply, but that's where we're at.
All right, so you're close to, you get to know the judges, you get to vote with more knowledge. I look at it and I see that they always pass.
All the time.
So I vote no on all of them. And I especially will be voting no on a judge named Welling, who was the guy who let a child rapist
Court of Appeals judge,
free. And then that rapist raped another child while he was out. It's just unconscionable. And Janet Rowland, a former Mesa County commissioner, is leading a charge.
And a candidate for
and a candidate for Mesa County Commission as well, is really leading a charge. But he'll likely retain. The system is broken. It's funny you mentioned, is it I forget, who is it that's
Coates
is going to be retiring.
Yeah.
For trivia, and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong on this, you might know that Roy Romer had a beef with the Supreme Court and then passed a law to limit the age to 72. There was not an age limit before.
Oh, wow.
And so Colorado has this age limit, which the U.S. Supreme Court doesn't have.
Nope.
And you think at 72, a guy might retire from the private sector and be a great Supreme Court nominee. But this was, so the one Republican is going to be aged out, one Republican nominee. It is a messed up system. Eric, did I have that one right? I'm pretty sure I do.
I can't help you on that one, John. Yeah, you may well be right. I just can't confirm that bit of history. I do flash back even further to my mentor, former boss, Dick Lamb, and obviously all of his Supreme Court appointees have long since aged out. But shortly after Lamb's term ended, some reporter asked him for one of his regrets or his biggest regret looking back at his governorship. And he pointed to a handful of the people he had put on the Supreme Court who turned out to be far more left than, let's say, Dick Lamb ended up. On this one, Colorado's system isn't perfect. I think it beats just the raw election of judges that you have in Texas and a bunch of southern states.
I just don't know. I go back and forth on that. And I talk to my friends who are in politics in other states. And, the issue with elected judges is then you turn judges into politicians and all sorts of weird things happen. But what we have here just doesn't work.
I guess the point I'd make, John, is I think in any workplace, you have about, 10 or 20% of your employees who are just outstanding and you want to keep them as long as you can keep them. And then you have another 60, 70% who are good enough. They're fine. They make the ship run, make the train run, whatever metaphor you want. And then you have 10 or 20% who are not doing the job and you ought to get rid of. And I got to believe the Colorado judiciary is not all that different. And there's 80 or 90% who are good enough, but there's a 10% factor that we could definitely do better by. And we get, as George points out, once a decade, once every 2 decades, a solitary judge will get bounced to the curb. But it just doesn't happen. In terms of what George pointed out about, the Democrats appointing judges, the burden is on the Republicans to occasionally win a gubernatorial election.
I agree with you.
Very much.
I'll say this, though. I think we can maintain the system. I don't like the idea of partisan judge races. I don't. But we could increase the level by which you need to attain to be retained. Like if you are running against
a super majority, you need 60%.
If you're running against nobody and you can't get a super majority, you shouldn't be a dang judge, right? I mean, if you can't hit 65, 67%, you shouldn't be on the bench. That would at least give us something.
Although at least with a partisan judge, a voter gets a sense as to what his leanings may be, or at least something that says who appointed this judge. And in the appointment process, the governor, for at least the Supreme Court, he can only choose out of 3 people.
That's right.
So, you know, the legislature pops out one, and then somebody else pops out one, and he pops out one, and he gets to choose by the appointments that are given to him. So it's not like the president who gets to just choose anybody.
That's true.
Right. Krista, who's had a lot of experience in front of a judge, but as a defendant, where are you on this?
Yeah, actually, you know what? By the time I was 21, I had no points left on my license. So there was a time when I go up to court quite a bit. That I'm reformed, just for the record. You know, I'm sympathetic to what you're saying.
Why do I have a feeling, George, there's some stories behind that we might want to follow up on?
And maybe a statute of limitations or two. I don't know.
I used to be a really bad driver. Like I said, I've reformed. But anyway, I did learn about Judge Welling. You brought him up, and the letting this horrible person out. I went to justiceforallcolorado.org, which Ross Kaminsky, our friend on his radio show, recommended, learned the whole story, and then voted no on that particular judge. But I think that's what it takes. If a judge is that bad, you're going to have people rise up, create a website, create an awareness to say, this is a bad judge, let's get him out of here.
Yeah, but he won't. He will survive this, is my guess, because it takes a lot of money to get the word out. The system is broken. Maybe a supermajority vote would be a good way to do it. There's got to be something. And again, lawyers are the ones who do the blue book recommendations through this commission. It's mostly lawyers. Lawyers are not going to say bad things about the guys they plead in front of. The system is just, it's a broken system. And it's one of the reasons why the Colorado courts are notoriously left-leaning. Look at what they've done to Tabor and so many other things. We've got a few other folks with some questions. We never talked about Cory Gardner. I'd really like to get Eric's take on this before we talk about this, because you've followed a lot of these races. You said before Cory will do whatever Trump does, plus a couple of points. Does Cory have a shot at winning?
I don't think so. I think Cory was always going to be up against it, running in a presidential year. Don't forget that Cory got elected 6 years ago in an off year, which was the best Republican year, best year Republicans have seen in Colorado and around the country in a while. This is a state that has never taken to Donald Trump. Cory has chosen to be attached at the hip to Donald Trump. I'll do a shameless plug for a column I had in Colorado Politics yesterday, where I took Cory to task for not having any independence from Donald Trump and just living in fear of the Trump base. I've also taken...
Let me jump on that for a second, because it's so funny. There are people in the Republican hardcore Tea Party circles who are going to tell you that if/when Cory loses, it's because he wasn't Trump enough. Right. And if only he acted more like Trump, voted more like Trump, he would have won. And so if Cory loses, he's going to get it from both sides. It's going to get it from the hardcore folks going, you see, you weren't crazy Trump enough. And then other folks saying, no, you were connected as Trump.
Well, let me just flash back to my answer to the last question, John, which was a little tongue-in-cheek, but in terms of judges, that Republicans have to start winning gubernatorial elections. Well, you know, yes, they're going to be that criticism of Cory from the hardcore Trumpian right, but you have to decide who you're going to listen to. And if you listen to those people, you're going to continue to lose elections. Cory's run the superior campaign. Let me be clear. His campaign has been much more inspired than John Hickenlooper's campaign. I'm not a fan of Hickenlooper's candidacy. He nailed it right when he said this wasn't a terribly good fit for him. It's like a consolation prize, having gone nowhere in the presidential race. But that said, Hickenlooper's going to win this and win it comfortably. I mean, Jared Polis beat Walker Stapleton, or as I like calling him these days, Walker Central Park, by 10.5 points. And I think you're looking at a comparable margin.
I think, let me jump on a couple of things you've said. Now, I'm friends with Cory. I'm impressed with Cory. Cory is a genuinely incredible guy. I think he has run a great campaign, even though there'll be people who say he didn't say this, he didn't say that, he didn't do this. And Hickenlooper oozes how much he does not want to be senator. I've never met a guy who doesn't want a job in the United States Senate more than Hickenlooper. If Hillary had won 4 years ago, Corey would be walking into his second term. Eric, do you agree with me on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is an increasingly blue state, so I'm not sure I'd go with walking in. But yeah, if Hillary had won, there is no Donald Trump for Corey to attach to. Everything plays out differently over the last 4 years.
Krista, Corey, does he have a shot? I think he's run I know you hope so, and I hope my hair grows back too. Does he have a shot?
Propecia.
Better shot than your hair, but I've known Corey Gardner since we were both Hill staffers. He is a really good person, and if you hear a little sadness in my voice, the thought of him losing makes me a little bit sad, just because he's a really good person. He's been a great senator, and it saddens me. I grew up in this state.
He has what so many Republicans don't have. He's likable. I mean, yes. That's what Hick had in spades. Jared Polis had it. Owens had it. In order to do it, this is somebody you want to hang out with. And he's genuinely a funny, affable guy. He's not he's not cranky. But I see this as a up. I just don't see how he breaks away from the anti-Trump thing this year. George?
I think that this continues the trend of John Hickenlooper being the luckiest man in state politics ever. He fell backwards.
Bennett has been pretty lucky himself, too.
And he will after this, too. But Hickenlooper fell backwards over the bodies of Dan May and Tom Tancredo in 2010, when that was the Republican seat for the taking. In 2014, he happened to go against a nice guy, Bob Beaupre, who just lost all the funding he needed in the last few weeks and didn't mount the campaign, I imagine, that could have possibly won that. And here he is, a guy who has disavowed the office, said he wouldn't be good at it, doesn't want it, and then handed Corey and the state of Colorado the first of its kind ethics violations against a governor with the highest fine ever, held in contempt. And this dude, I agree with Eric, is probably going to pull this off by a comfortable margin. The downside of that is, and I think we should talk a little bit about long-term if that happens. If Corey loses by 8 or 10 points, the problem is this state, which we all recognize right now, it ain't purple. It hadn't been purple for a bit.
Purple for a long time.
It is blue, but that message will be sent nationwide. And so that Bennett reelection in 2022, if he decides he wants to do it, we're going to lose out on the ability to get real national money in here, because the national funders are going to say, this is a joke. There's no chance we pull this off, even in a midterm on Biden. And just to throw this thing out there, because it's personal to me, if Hillary Clinton had been president, and I'm going to say it, you'd be talking to the Attorney General of the state.
Yeah, you would be talking to the Attorney General of the state of Colorado.
I'm okay.
Oh, get over it. Bobby. I think I agree with all of you, and that although 2 years from now, it is possible Corey could run again in 2 years. I think after 2 years of a Harris presidency and what it's going to do to the economy and what's going to happen here, I think the backlash in that midterm could be sizable. And I could see Colorado Republicans winning back either the House or the Senate, maybe not the governor's office, but also the seats that AG, which you would have won if Hillary went the other way. So in any event, all right, let's. Oh, and Chris pointed out that even the Colorado Department of Wildlife biologists don't like the wolf reintroduction.
Funny.
Yeah, isn't that funny? So the professionals don't like it.
Trust the science.
Yeah. All right. Let me ask you guys, what is the surprise? Well, let's leave it with just a couple quick questions. George, will there be a surprise through this election?
At which level?
Either one, either on the state or national.
I think, and I hate to be the pessimist, I think the surprise will be how in play Douglas County has become. And I'm a Douglas County resident for a long time, and I intend to be. I think that we are seeing Douglas County get soft on ours and turn Jeffco and Arapahoe in a way that 4 years ago I'd have said no chance.
Krista, what's going to be the big surprise?
The big surprise in the primary was Lauren Boebert winning and taking out Tipton. If she wins, it's just interesting. Right now, it's a fairly close race. She's ahead. She's young, Spitfire, and I just think it's an interesting election. It'll be interesting to see her in office.
I think she pulls it off, but it's telling that the Democrats are pouring millions of dollars into that race. They obviously think that there's a shot there.
They're also scared of her. They know she is going to be a media maven when she gets out there, and they don't want a conservative AOC.
Eric, what do you see as the big surprise?
I think George hit on a good point about Douglas County. I even go to my old hometown years and years ago of El Paso County, Colorado Springs. And, Colorado Springs is not about to become a Democratic hotbed, but the Republican dominance down there 5-10 years from now is not going to be what it is today. And that just points to the problem Republicans are facing in this state is they're losing the grip on their super strongholds. In terms of, I'm going to go differently on Lauren Boebert. I don't know if she wins or loses. This is a district that went for Donald Trump by 12 points. That's a huge number. And just the fact that it's a close race tells you about some of Boebert's problems. And I would say that if she wins, and if I was to bet, I'd bet she probably pulls it out. But if she wins, it doesn't help the Colorado Republican Party's brand because she becomes, you don't have Cory Gardner around to be the brand anymore. Lauren Boebert becomes the brand. Tell me how that's going to work for you in the Front Range.
Well, we can always have Lamborn. I think one of the surprises is going to be how the left increases their lockhold on Colorado. Republicans might win a seat or two in the House, but we're so far behind it doesn't matter. I believe the Republicans will lose at least one Senate seat, maybe 2 Senate seats. At which point, I just don't know how we keep any of this progressive madness in check. I think that opens up a lot of opportunities for 2 years from now because I think there'll be a backlash. I know we're a blue state, and we are a blue state. We haven't been a purple state for a long time, despite whatever the media says. That said, there will be that pendulum will swing back. Will it be enough to win something to tie it up? I don't know. I see a lot of pain, financial pain for America in the next 2 years. Either way, we had somebody who asked about Polis recalls, and I think it is the most fanciful thing to think that a Polis recall is going to work. I looked at the polling numbers from Civics, just did a poll, and Trump his favorables are underwater considerably in Colorado. Biden's favorables are underwater in Colorado. Cory Gardner's are really underwater in Colorado. So politicians are just underwater in favorability. Polis is at 52%. I understand. I would love to recall Jared Polis. It is a fanciful idea, and this is why some people in the conservative world just lose touch with reality.
Yeah, I think it's emotional. I think if part of the end result, though, is that we're developing a better, more activist database that we can reach out to for future events, there may be something positive there, but I don't think there's a chance in hell that this thing happens.
Eric, this is, I mean, I understand the frustration. I want to believe in Santa Claus too, but I just don't see, I don't even see a recall making the ballot.
You don't believe in Santa Claus, John. Interesting. Got to go in the op research file.
Yeah.
No, I mean, this is a diversion. Serious Republicans are not focused on this. They're focused on serious stuff. You're not even going to get this on the ballot, much less if you ever got it on the ballot, it would go nowhere. It's crazy.
But it really shows how Team R in Colorado is still dysfunctional. And that Democrats seem to be able to sing off the same choir sheet so much more easily than conservatives. And it's partly the makeup of conservatives. We're individuals. And so we just don't stay on message the same way. And there are those who don't see the reality of electoral politics. And it's maddening because I see it all over. I call it Caldeira's first political axiom. There's nothing Republicans can't screw up. Krista, you see it any differently?
No, and I just think that the recall law is abused. It seems to me that recall should be used for malfeasance. You've got somebody who's corrupt, who does something blatantly illegal while in office. That person should be subject to a recall. But just simply to go after people you don't like. I mean, Jared Polis, Tom Sullivan, all of these folks were elected. If you want to get them out of office, find somebody better and run them in the next election. But don't misuse the recall law to take out people you don't like.
I'll disagree with Krista on this. I have no problem with the recall law. When we took out Senator John Morse, down south, he put in a ridiculous gun control law. I don't think, pardon the pun on this, I wouldn't have pulled the trigger on that recall because I didn't think it was winnable, but it was winnable. And if people are dissatisfied with their elected representatives, this is a safety valve. I don't think there's nothing in there that says it has to be for malfeasance. It might be that you just went crazy. Quick thought?
I was just going to say that your comment about the Democrats seem to be able to be on the same page more often. I go back to the Yoda of the Democrat politics, Ted Trimpa. And Ted said after the last election, he goes, look, the problem with Republicans is they care about being right. Yep. Democrats care about winning. That is the distinction between them and us right now. Winning matters, being right doesn't.
All right, let's do this real fast. Taxes still stay low here. Someone wanted to, Bradley asked about Tabor, and that, I think Coloradans still love the taxpayer Bill of Rights, but it doesn't mean that the left doesn't control the levers of power. I believe there are two things that keep us from being California. One is the taxpayer Bill of Rights, and two is our flat tax rate, which is also protected somewhat through the taxpayer Bill of Rights. When we lose those, I think the wheels come off of Colorado. All right, let's do this last question, and we'll set it up. When Biden wins, how long until Kamala Harris becomes president?
I don't know. I know that's a common thing. I've even thought it myself, but I think it would be well into the 2-year mark before he would do anything like that. One, to preserve her ability to run for 2 terms. But I don't know. I just think she's going to have an outsized influence. I think the idea that he's going to bail out. I'm intrigued by this Pelosi move, though, on the 25th Amendment. But I don't know. It makes me want to weep to think that we're going to have a president.
All right, we'll let you cry. Krista Kafer, how long until Harris becomes president?
Sometime in the first term. And she is not very likable. And she's beautiful, but then when she starts talking and sneering and she just comes off very, very arrogant, like a sort of more attractive Hillary Clinton. I don't see her winning on her own. And, but, with Biden coming in, bringing her in with him, he seems likable, but like George said, he is certainly moved to the left, and he may end up being a puppet of the left.
A more attractive version of Hillary. Well, that's a pretty high bar, yes. So I'm going to keep it there. Eric, quick thought on Kamala Harris.
January 2025. I think Biden, wishing him decent health, serves his term out. Let's hope so. I think you have a race in 2024 between Kamala Harris and Nikki Haley. The country knows it's getting its first woman president. It knows it's getting its first woman president of minority heritage. And let's have it out.
My big worry is that Kamala Harris becomes president right after Biden is sworn in. Oh, he'll still be president, but she'll be running the country. I think they have pulled the party so far left. Well, hey, quick cheers. Hey, thank you, Eric. Thank you, Krista. Thank all of you for joining us. Please, by all means, if you don't, here, just take the whole bottle. We put a nipple on it here for you so you can,
I love nipples.
Like a baby bottle. If you don't go to Complete Colorado every day, you're really missing all the greatest news and opinions that we have. Eric, thank you. Krista, thank you. We've already called the police to keep an eye on a DUI for you to come home.
So, thank you.
And to Colorado, thank you all so much.